have some power-packed women leaders coming on today for a very interesting session on building resilience in the new normal. And I hope after that small meditative session with Deepti, you're all ready for a very power-packed talk today on about the industry, about building resilience and being ready for the new normal. And to start with, I'm going to introduce Neeraja Ganesh. After a successful career in the IT industry, managing large teams, Neeraja Ganesh switched her career to work in the space of gender diversity and headed the jobs for her foundation. In the 18 months that she single-handedly headed the not-for-profit foundation, which was set up to bridge the gender gap in India, she built a unique brand, numerous partnerships, and a large community of women who experienced a variety of learning interventions through workshops, conferences, training, and hands-on projects. She's now a freelance consultant who conducts various training programs and workshops on leadership and behaviors. Welcome, Neeraja. Very happy to have you on board today. Next speaker would be Amar. Amar is the Senior Director at GoDaddy India, with an expertise in defining go-to-market strategies for the SMB space in India, and has several years of professional experience gained by working across multiple startups and global MNCs across the country. Passionate about helping everyday entrepreneurs opening themselves up to digital possibilities, Amar is currently responsible for revenue management, pricing, and customer retention for GoDaddy in India. Welcome, Amar. It's very happy and very grateful to have you here today. Our next speaker is Nandini Murali, who is a principal strategist of mental health and wellness at Avatar. Dr. Nandini Murali is a certified life coach, a suicide prevention and mental health activist, author, and communications gender diversity professional. Dr. Nandini Murali's lived experience of suicide loss inspired her to establish Speak, an initiative of MS Chellamuthu Trust and Research Foundation Madurai, to create safe, supportive spaces to prevent suicide and promote mental health, and Speak to Us, a mental health helpline. Thank you, Dr. Nandini, for being with us today. Our final speaker is Kupulakshmi Krishnamurthy, Global Head of Zoho Startups, and we fondly call her as Kupu. She heads the Zoho for Startups program globally. She's been part of Zoho's growth story for about a decade, and bridging the gap between businesses and technology has been her core area of work. She focuses on strategic alliances between Zoho and various startup bodies, such as state governments, incubators, accelerators, and other stakeholders. Thank you so much, Kupu, for being with us today. And I'm going to hand over the stage to Neeraja, who will be moderating the session on building resilience in the new normal. Over to you, Neeraja.
Thank you so much, Vandana. Thank you, Jinal. And it is really wonderful to be on this platform. I have attended sessions on the 2 days and today also. And I have to say that there has been a lot of learning, a lot of takeaways, and looking forward to this conversation also. While we've titled the session Building Resilience in the New Normal, I also understand that today the large population attending the session is students, girl students from colleges. So let's kind of begin with something more simpler than the complex term called resilience, and we'll reach there soon. When it comes to everyone, especially the students, there's a lot of talk about skills, right? And they are studying, they are in colleges, they are doing whatever courses they are in terms of, gaining skills. Let me start by talking or asking Kupu, who says she's a fan of Explain It Like I'm 5, right? So let's hear from her in terms of, and she's someone who's kind of transitioned herself in her career from being a trainer to now being the global head of Zoho for Startups. What are the kind of skills that probably are needed in this new normal, and how can women stay job ready in the new normal? What additional skills will be an advantage for them?
Thank you, Neeraja. I hope I'm audible. Good?
Yeah. Yes, Kupu.
Okay, so it's quite exciting to bump into Neeraja and a few others which I'm connected in various other ways, directly and indirectly. And a big kudos to everyone who has taken the time, set aside the time to be part of this now on a Sunday evening. This itself is the first step done right, correct? To not be busy for such events and then imbibe and soak in all the learning and the wisdom that everyone's been sharing. So coming back to the question that is asked, I'm going to share something that is from my life, and also how in the current situation some of what I have learned are changing. You know, when I have to answer how women can stay job ready in the new normal, you know, the brain and heart brings various points to mind, where when I started looking for a job after I finished my post graduation in microbiology, the world was very different. I'm talking about 2002, and we did not have LinkedIn or, you know, various other opportunity to network, or what we call show your work, various platforms to show who you are or show who you are as a personal brand. With that opportunity, I still think compared to what we are seeing today, finding a job was rather easy. No, I'm not talking about building a career. At that time, I think when we attended interviews, along with answering questions, asking the right questions was very important. With whatever resources you had to learn about what the organization was and how you are going to come and contribute by using your skills that you already have, and how you are open to learning on the go. So these are the things that I realize that are always going to, these are the things, the skills that are never going to change. Some of which are qualities, some of which are skills. Now, because we are talking about women, girl students now, especially as part of this audience, there are some things that we are naturally gifted, we are born with. One most important discovery for me in the last 4-5 years has been the strength, the skill, the aspect that we women have called emotional intelligence. We all talk about IQ enough, what gives us more success, what helps us secure more marks, what helps us graduate with flying colors. Women, we are blessed to naturally with high meters of EQ or emotional who are looking for job opportunities. We can hack into what is these qualities that are inbuilt in us, bring it to the fore. Say, for example, how self-aware you are during this time of challenge, when I'm more lost, when there are more people applying for the same job. Can I look into myself and look at my strength along with my weaknesses? Yes, but I'm very self-aware. Am I positive most of the time? Am I working towards building a personal brand that is authentic, that is quite honest, and I'm consistent in my efforts to show who I am to the world? So most of the times now, when I look back into my life, along with who I am at work, what I'm doing other than my work, very key role to secure a job or to be eligible for something more than what I am doing. So build a personal skills. I wouldn't call it a skill, but something that you can learn. Now, what we will be talking more a few minutes, resilience, because this is kind of a brain hack where with every challenge that is being present, when every path and looks like a maze and we feel lost, how we are going to hack the right side of the brain and find, you know, new doors and paths without beating ourselves too much. So we have daily conversations about this in a very simplified. I'm not able to explain this to my 9-year-old now. I won't be able to explain one. So we all, when we talk, when motivational speakers, when we read self-help and all of that, it's sometimes, you know, it's 100% something and 0% of the other. Example, we might hear people saying, don't look to your past, be hopeful of your future. So my daughter and I, we talk about a little bit of this and a little, forget your past, your future, but not too confident, saying, I won't do anything about it. So look at your past and look all of the wonderful memories you have made, the kind of efforts that you have taken to build who you are. And as adults, when you grow, you pat yourself, right? There's no one to motivate you. self-motivation, to pat your back, I've done good I've had today. So reskilling, upskilling with the time you have, looking into your the brain in order to understand, ready for the new normal. And I think this will be a very good additional skill for the future for the profile. And many of the universities, during this time, they've made knowledge free and accessible. So with a little bit of time management and planning, we can always keep sharpening our axe. So this is my take, Neeraja. That was a great question. Thank you.
Thanks, Kupu. I just want you to just check on your internet, because I think at times the screen is freezing and I think the audio and the video is not syncing. So you can just probably check on the internet. I'll move on. Wonderfully answered. We did catch most of the response. And if my internet, behaves in the same way, please somebody give me the feedback. Let me, move on to the next person on our panel, Amar Aujla. And I actually, went through everyone's profiles, whoever is, not only on this panel, but the 3 days, just to kind of, get to know them better. And I see, Amar, that you've had a career through different industries. You started with the tire and rubber industry. That's what LinkedIn tells me. And then the global financial, platform Intuit. And then now, of course, with the GoDaddy, that's an organization that's helping entrepreneurs build, their brands and kind of reach out to their customers through websites, etc. I think you're the right person to tell us what are those skills that the young women should bring to the table to improve their career prospects. So there are skills. We are all learning hundreds of things, but what is it that will give them that edge?
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to be here. To be part of this esteemed panel and to be speaking and interacting with students that are really the future of India, future of the world. So thank you for inviting me. So, when I go back and think, and I've done many things before that, I actually finished college in the late 90s. So I've been, working for more than 20 years now. And I've put a short summary on LinkedIn because I thought too much information will date me and maybe not be so good for future recruiters. So, yes, I've had the privilege of working, in the old economy companies and a new economy company now. So when I say old economy, it's not to devalue, manufacturing companies in any way, because of course they're such an integral part of our day-to-day life. So I had the opportunity to be treasurer for Goodyear India, which is of course, one of the oldest tire companies in India. And like you mentioned, currently I work for GoDaddy, where students can go and buy their .coms and .ins for their future businesses. So I think what skills would help students or anyone who's moving from the world of academia to the world to the professional world. I think someone needs to go on mute. Yeah, thanks. So, so I think those skills are more age old. So when I look at new entrants in the workplace, people who are doing really well in their careers, it's really the age old skills of communication and collaboration that I think still holds the fort. So, you can go and pick up, really important skills, say in artificial intelligence, for instance. But one of the biggest skills that most managers and leadership teams look for is your ability to work in a team. So if you ask me, it's really communication and collaboration skills that will see you go the extra mile. So, if you can figure out different ways to hone your communication skills by working with people from varied backgrounds, or people who come from different skill sets, who may be across, spread across different geographies, different time zones. And the two really go hand in hand, communication and collaboration. So how do you really hone that ability to work effectively in teams? I feel, will shape your career in the early years, especially in the early years, it's very, very critical. and then to have good verbal, written skills, which is really basic stuff that, you have excellent verbal communication skills. Do you have the ability to read people's emotions? So like Kupu mentioned, emotional, and I completely echo what Kupu said, that, emotional quotient is really what takes you the extra mile and over the long haul. So yes, cognitive skills, cognitive abilities are very, very important. But what is probably just, if not more important, is interpersonal skills and having a high emotional quotient, and really being able to work effectively with people who might have different views, different backgrounds, different opinions from you. And yes, so those are the two big ones that I think, I love to see on my team and for the new folks who we are hiring. Does that answer your question,
Absolutely, absolutely, Amar. And I so agree, right? All of us keep focusing on all the best and the newest that is coming, and we kind of forget the age-old, these soft skills or whatever you call them, and that's what kind of mars the performance, your own performance, as well as the performance of the entire team. And you keep thinking, I got all the A grades, and why is it that I still am not able to move on? Thank you for being so candid about that. And we also have with us Dr. Nandini Murli, who is a gender diversity professional. There are a lot of taglines that we can give to Dr. Murli. And she's also worked in the space of mental health. She's an author of some brilliant books. And I think she would be best placed to talk about how can young women make the best out of the opportunities that come their way, right? Now, all of us, want XYZ, and we kind of do our CV, we apply for those, and you should do that. I'm not denying that. But then there are, some opportunities, that just come your way, which you probably don't even look at as opportunities. And with the new normal, if we understand, and I think each of us has a different definition of the new normal, how is it that these young students can make the best out of these opportunities that are coming our way?
Thank you, Neerja. I'm delighted to be on this panel and meeting all the co-panelists and the participants, albeit virtually. Before I begin, I'd like to sort of look at the term new normal, because I'm so concerned it's becoming a cliche. It's bandied, used around, tossed around so casually that I sometimes really wonder, like cliches, do we really lose the essence and just keep using that word in a very superficial sense? I must admit, I hadn't heard of the term new normal until a personal tragedy about 4 years back upturned my life inside out, upside down. So that was when I thought, okay, after 1 year, there's this tragedy. It was a crisis. It was a huge personal tragedy. And I just thought, okay, afterwards, life will just go back to being what it was. Nothing had prepared me that, sometimes when we go through crisis, tragedies, or very challenging situations, life turns inside out, upside down. And life as we once knew it is just not there anymore. So there is this crisis, whatever form it happens. And then we are forced to deal with change and transition. And then when we talk of the new normal, like in the pandemic, I'm sure all of us are negotiating and renegotiating this new normal, because life as we once knew it, say 1.5 years back, is just not there right now. We are hoping that one day things might go back to what it was. But in some situations, especially in the case of personal tragedies, very devastating personal losses, you're just forced to do a reckoning. So even in the pandemic, I am told that back to business may not happen very soon, at least not in the ways we are looking for. So this is the new normal. And whenever we are forced to renegotiate with the new normal, it's pretty elusive. you know, it's not a very linear process. Okay, this happens, the pandemic, and I'm sure that young college students who joined college last year, this is the second year, and even this year, I think classes are being held online. And I'm worried if next year, this is the third year, would this generation go through undergraduation without having stepped into the college? And what losses those are, you know, there's a macro loss and there are so many micro losses, you know, the joy and the fun of interacting with your peers. So that fills me with a great sense of sadness. So coming back to the new normal, it's just not a very linear process that, okay, and then you just seamlessly adapt. It's a process of learning to renegotiate, relive, readapt, and reinvent yourself, reacclimatize oneself. And we are learning to, or relearning, how to adapt, how to inhabit the world, so to speak, the physical world and the psychological world. So with that in mind, I think in the context of the pandemic, I think the new normal, as in any other context, it's very elusive. So I call it the 5 A's. First, we need to acclimatize that to the change situation we see around us. And then, of course, we first we need to acknowledge, and then we acclimatize, you know, we learn to adapt, we learn to evolve strategies. And then, of course, after acclimatization is assimilating. That is, we learn to internalize. I'm sure for all those of us who are working also, it's a virtual workspace. And I find that since the pandemic, I'm working far more than I did earlier. It just seems work, and, you know, not being able to meet our loved ones, friends. It's kind of, but I feel I'm very, very productive, but it also makes me feel very, very robotic. And then, of course, I think there's this whole thing of accepting the loss. Accepting the change, rather. And in a sense, the pandemic is a loss, you know, lots of macro and micro losses. And finally, I think we need to affirm ourselves that all the resources we need to deal with this situation is actually within us. And that's what I would like young people to keep in mind, because we're so, I think it's almost a knee-jerk or a default. We always look for external support. You know, I'm not saying that's in a sense of good or bad, but instead of always looking for someone to rescue you, why don't we turn the gaze inwards and say that all that I need to deal with this challenge is within me. I'm infinitely resourceful and capable. That's one. And how do we make the best use of the opportunities? I think in the new normal, opportunities come disguised. And I think we need to sort of be attuned to spot opportunities. My first, I wouldn't call it advice, because I'm not sure whether I'm qualified to give advice, is I think young people at the age, I presume most of them are in their late teens or early 20s, it's about it. Now is the time to discover your purpose. What is your purpose in life? What is our purpose? What is our swadharma? What is it that makes us passionate? You know, because I say this because most of us, we sleepwalk through life, hardly discovering our purpose. And then by the time we wake up, half our life is over. So this is the time when young people should ask yourselves, what is it that drives me? What is it that calls out to me? What is my passion? And then once you've identified your passion, I think probably this is the time when you sort of invest in skilling. You know, how do you build that, build your professional portfolio, whether it is investing in skills commensurate with what you would like to do, keeping in mind the job market. I have a young colleague who works with me. She must be around the same age as most of the participants. And I found that she had a flair for graphic design. And because when we would create communication products, she's a natural, and design just came to her naturally. So I would keep telling her, maybe this is the time you should probably enroll yourself in a graphic design course. And then I forgot about it. And then she tells me just a couple of days back, she has, Udemy offers a lot of very interesting courses. And she's enrolled in a graphic design course. So that is one thing. And the other thing is, despite the constraints, despite the challenges, despite so many restrictions in our lives, I think in as much as we have lost quite a lot of things, there are things which are just springing up like wildflowers. Can we stay attuned to that? I think the internet is a space which is abundant with opportunities and spaces where one can find what one would like to do. So I suppose it is staying open to such opportunities and see if what you find matches or what calls to you. And also the other thing I would say is that be open to what is happening around you. And I think this is the time when I suppose we move from very fixed, narrow conceptions of what is possible into really being creative and just jumping into the unknown, because you never know what you might discover. So I think this a sense of curiosity and a sense of exploration. And I think that's how we navigate this new normal, with all its challenges. At the same time, with all equally, it's a time of great possibilities as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nandini, for that. And the 5A model, is really cool. And I love the acceptance part. I think that's where one needs to start. If you're going to be in a state of denial, whatever it be, it could be, the marks that you scored, or it could be something bigger than that, that you are, not willing to, kind of even accept. You are not going to be able to move forward. And even if things are, right in front of you, you may not even see it, and you want to, take it forward. Thanks for, making it that simple. And one of the things that I also saw on the chat, which Amar also put, was about, building networks. And I thought, let me, spend a few minutes, talking about the importance of networks. I'm sure, everybody's heard that, one needs to be heavily networked, because that's the only way, and that's probably the best way to kind of grow professionally. But I really want to talk about, before going into the topic, which is about communities and how communities help all of us, I want to just talk about the difference between networks and communities, because people use these terms very interchangeably. So I have one slide which kind of shows it very beautifully, and I'll come out of the slide very quickly. It's not a long presentation, but it's just for us to, understand, if we were to look at the amount of trust that we have between, the number of people that have kind of gotten together, and the shared beliefs that the people who are together have, and we plot it on this kind of a graph, it will tell us whether we are part of a crowd. Like we are standing at a traffic signal, whichever day we are able to go and stand at a traffic signal again, that people are just there because they want to cross the road. Beyond that, there's nothing common between them, right? One is going to a college and another to an office. And the amount of trust between two people there is absolutely minimal, and that's a crowd. But if you kind of look at it from a shared belief being a little more prominent, still the trust being limited, like a WhatsApp groups, like many of us are part of certain WhatsApp groups. I usually give the example of now, in the last 1.5 years, so many of us have become part of groups which are around meditation or yoga or maybe, music or art. So you all have a common purpose on that WhatsApp group, but then the trust is, absolutely not there, because there is no need for you to kind of mingle with somebody. You're just there to consume content and, probably use it. That's a group. What we're going to talk now is about a network, and then how a community shapes up and how these communities can help us in our lives. Now, obviously, a network is where a lot of people come together. Like, for example, all of you have come together to attend this conference, which WSCARE and Rotary have put together. Now, all of you are part of this network. In terms of the shared belief, all of you are there to kind of listen and to take back something, and that's all, right? But the trust is a little more higher because you felt that this is worth spending your time. It's not some ad hoc conference. It's okay for me to spend 3 hours on a Sunday and gain something. So the trust with the organizer, the trust with the speakers, the trust on the system that you are logged into is much higher. So you're part of a network. And from this network is what communities emerge, which is where, supposing you meet these people more often, like you have, some lean-in circles, or if WSCARE puts up, certain meetups every often, and you have the same people who are attending these meetups and you're meeting them again. Next time I meet Kuku and Amar and Nandini, we get talking about, something, and we realize that there is something common that we have. We share something beyond just, coming to the panel to speak about our experiences. And we might decide to build a community around that space, which is common. It could be as simple as food. All of us like to eat food. So let's, build a food community, or it could be something, else. And that is where the level of trust is extremely high and the commonality of belief is extremely high. And ideally, we should be part of such communities, at least 1 or 2, if not more. But please be part of as many networks as you can be. And let me stop this share. And why am I saying this? Let me give you a quick example. So I have a 19-year-old daughter. So last year, she was in the 12th when the pandemic hit, and she had 1 paper to finish. And she didn't know when it was going to finish. Now, my girl, she's quite focused, and she had this huge list of things that she had anyways wanted to do because she knew it was going to be a longish break before she gets into college. And with the pandemic, one didn't know how long the break was. So she kind of, enrolled for every course and everything else. And she saw this opportunity with this new organization called as Aspire for Her. This was started last March, and it was for girls in the age group of 18 to 25, with the intention of telling the girls that you need to look at careers very intentionally. No, it's not that, okay, fine, let me see what job comes my way and, I will figure it out. And if I don't like it, then, I may leave it. Or if I get married tomorrow to a rich, man, then, maybe that's not a priority. So intentional careers and financial independence throughout your life is absolutely key. Doesn't matter how much money you have or people have around you, but you need to be financially independent. So this was the core purpose behind setting up this organization. And the way Madhura Das Gupta Sinha, the founder, decided to kind of grow this during the pandemic was to bring in girls in this age group, 18 to 25, and give them a month-long externship, that's what she's called it, not paid, right? But bring them as ambassadors to spread word around about this platform. So my girl enrolled. She did her job for a month, but she kind of, being her, she was so proactive and, so kind of committed. She did it exceptionally well. And she was inducted into the core team of Aspire for Her. And she continues to remain in this organization along with her studies for the last 15 months. And the amount of exposure and growth and opportunities that she has seen, and the others like her who joined and have continued, have seen is amazing. But this is where the community feeling comes. For the girl, like Dr. Nandini said, she started college last year. She was dreaming of this campus that she wanted to join, and hence she picked this college in Bangalore. But she hasn't gone to the campus even one day. And we don't know when that day will arrive, when she can actually step into the campus. She doesn't know anybody from college because, you're just on a WhatsApp group or you're on MS Teams or Google Meet. So you really don't know anybody else. But what has kept her sane, almost like, oxygen for her on a daily basis, is this network, which has turned into a community for her, which is Aspire for Her, and the purpose that you spoke about of doing something, contributing something. And I will also take example of another girl, from the same organization, much younger than my daughter, 17-year-old, who I think she's studying commerce, but she has her passions for creative design. Okay, so she does all the creatives, the communication creatives for this organization. And she, she kind of does so many other things for her passion. She's recently launched something called as Baked by Bree. So her name is Brishti. She's realized that in her own way, she wants to support, the COVID situation by bringing in some money. So she likes to bake. And so she's been baking some cookies and packing them, and she's been shipping it to all friends and whoever else, through social media. She's kind of got those contacts across the country, and whatever money she gets out of it, she's trying to help, towards the COVID relief in her own way. And this is what she says. I will read it out for you. She says that Baked by Bree was the 10-year-old Brishti's dream. To finally see it in the works makes me so happy. My ardent love for baking, coupled with my desire to help the ones hardest hit by these trying times, I organized to set up this bake sale in collaboration with Ushore, where the entire profit will go to buying ration kits for those who are unable to sustain their living, both due to the recent cyclone Yas as well as the deadly COVID-19. And I have to add, I couldn't have done this without Aspire for her support. It is no doubt the best community that I'm part of. Everyone is so supportive, encouraging. It's like a family I have never met. So please, this is one of the things that I would really urge for everyone is be part of networks. It is important because you will get to meet people, you will get to learn, and there is going to be inspiration. But out of those networks will emerge these communities automatically when you see some commonality of purpose who are going to help you realize your passion, realize your dreams. And also, as I said, it will almost be like an oxygen for you to, overcome the current situation and move on. So that's something that I really wanted to tell people, that while skills are important, the soft skills are important, whatever we've spoken so far are important, but don't forget this aspect of networks and communities. I think it automatically kind of brings me to the next topic, which is about digital and digital platforms, right? So, and there was a question on the chat saying that what will you tell people who just waste their time on Instagram? Okay, so I'm just kind of, bringing both of those together. Again, we'll narrate a story because I'm known for, stories. And I kind of feel that, it's more impactful. So someone very close to me, their daughter was doing BCom, and the college told them that you need to get a laptop because they have to practice Tally at home. Now, this is not someone who can really afford to buy a laptop. 25,000 rupees means a lot for them, but the mother still went ahead and bought a laptop for this girl. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and I called her up and I said, so how are you using the laptop beyond the Tally practice? And she said, no, I'm not interested in doing anything. I just look at YouTube videos and, spend my time and all of that. So while digital platforms are a great, asset today, but there is also, this aspect of how does one utilize, and how does one utilize it for the right purpose? So I really would like to ask this question to Amar, with all her experience with GoDaddy and the websites that, that we kind of get to create. How can we help these girls understand how to gain the maximum exposure from these digital platforms in a safe and informative way?
Right, absolutely. So safety is paramount. And just to go back to the question on the chat, I think we're all guilty of that. I don't think I know anyone who hasn't spent, some amount of time in the last 1 year just mindlessly, skimming through content on the internet. So I think you can give everyone a little bit of leeway in these difficult times, but time is the most important resource. And then I just wanted to share that, you're just data for a company on the other end. So you always have to think of it that way, that, and I tell all young people that, all my nieces, nephews, my daughter's still younger, that, you're just, a statistic for someone on the other end, and, don't put out too much information on the internet. Of course, the basics hold, never put out your phone number, your address, and for Zoom, please don't use passwords like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's ubiquitous. No matter where I go, I see that password. And So that's, of course, not safe. And I know, digital safety is a matter of concern for parents, especially in India. And so usually the recommendation is to use platforms that are well moderated, and that there's a reporting mechanism so that if you face any sort of harassment online, there's someone or there's a process or procedure in place for reporting it. And for blocking, and then the privacy settings, of course, should be easy to access and understand. There are, so there is a room for hope because there are new features that are coming into play. For example, disabling comments and likes on a post, and there are other content moderation tools that everyone should have on their tips, to really control their presence online and stay safe. Then, in recent times, the one platform that I've heard a lot about, though I am not personally on it, is Clubhouse. So I don't know if the students here are on it, but I hear my younger colleagues at work rave about it. So I think that's another one that seems to be something that young women can use safely, because it's voice only, and it's by invite, and you can have your discussion in a closed room setting, and you can't really record content without permission. So I guess those so that might be a harbinger for the future, where platforms recognize that people don't inherently feel safe online, or they feel overexposed in what can be done for people to be online, but yet have full control over how much they're putting out there.
Surely, surely. Yeah, so, it is like a double-edged sword. You got to be there, at the same time, you've got to be careful, right? There is no way out. And I think we spoke about the need for a personal brand earlier. I think Rajshri was speaking on the other panel. And today it is so very important to have an online presence and, build an online brand. So, of course, all of us need to have an elevator pitch, as we know, but how often are we going to get into an elevator now? I don't think so. So where is the elevator? And for all of us, the elevator is the online world. What you do there is visible, and that's what your brand is. So you have to be careful, but you cannot not be there. So that's the message there, right? So use it very, very carefully to build your online presence, to build your brand. Pick and choose whatever social media platforms that you wish to, and you kind of just remember, what is it that you want people to know you for and know you as? And that should be the strategy when you are out there on the digital platform. So it can't just be, I say whatever I feel like randomly and then I regret, because it's, kind of removing your online messages is going to be very, very hard. It's always going to leave, the digital footprint over there. So the tone that you say, the messages that you speak, it has to be a conscious effort towards building a particular brand. It can't be all over the place to say, okay, fine, Neerja will do this, and that. While you would like to do all of that, but what is it that you need to be known for? That's something that needs to come out. And what is the kind of, what should I say, the tone of your message, the voice of your message? Are you a controversial person? Do you want to be known as that? Or, are you someone who is always very highly opinionated? Is that what you want to be known as? So be very, very clear about even one line that you write with all of this in mind, but do it is something that I would definitely recommend. A brand once built, it's very hard for it to kind of, go away. When I was at, when I came out of Jobs for Her, I had launched a workshop and it was on networking. I think it was, because I do a lot of talks on networking. And there were 96 women who signed up for this workshop. And I went back to see, did any of the promotional messages say that this workshop is only for women? Because I did not think of it only for women. And I went back to the promotional content. It did not say only for women, but I had only 96 women sign up for it. And then I realized, because of my work at Jobs for Her, which I did only for women, right? The 18 months that I was there, almost all of my content, all of the that I used to speak was for women. Hey, women, come and attend this. This is for women. People assume that whatever I do in future is also going to be for women. So that's how, unconsciously brands get built. So be very careful, but it is a must for you to kind of utilize this platform, because that is a way that you build your visibility, your credibility, and opportunities, will kind of come your way. Now let's come to the real topic of resilience. We've already touched on it in many aspects. I think this is something which is relevant for everyone, but I would never have thought that an 18-year-old needs to know about resilience or needs to know how to deal with a situation. And I've kind of seen, while I feel with my own daughter, I always thought that, okay, I think she is a strong person. We kind of say resilience might be a difficult word to understand, but we always say, oh, you are strong, right? But in this 1 year, I can see her sense of frustration, despite the fact that she's kept herself so productively utilized with Aspire for Her, with all sorts of things that she writes, poetry and all of that. I think she's reached a stage where she's almost giving up her studies. She just came and said, I don't think I want to study anymore. Let me just go do a job. Right? So let me, definitely ask Dr. Nandini, and I would also like to know Kupu's, thoughts in terms of what are your suggestions for these students to stay motivated, especially with the new challenges? Dr. Nandini, would you like to go first?
Neerja, I found myself nodding to almost everything what you were saying, because that's been my experience as well. So let me just once again come back to this context of the new normal and the pandemic vis-a-vis resilience. I'll start with, like you, I'm very fond of stories. Especially personal stories. I grew up in a family where I just saw resilience in action day in and day out. I heard of the word resilience very recently, but I knew, I felt, I saw, I could touch, feel what resilience looked like. So it was almost like an intergenerational legacy. Because you see it in action, and you really know. And of late, I've been hearing the word resilience, and then I found out, oh, but actually I knew all this. It was, I also think resilience is largely caught and not taught. But that said, it's such a core life skill. And I am surprised why, when we have so many n number of soft skills being delivered, nobody ever talks about resilience as a core life skill. But when a tragedy strikes, when a challenge comes up, or when you're stuck somewhere, you're just told, be strong. But why aren't we taught how do you develop those strengths? And resilience, building resilience doesn't happen overnight. It's like building a muscle. You have to exercise. The more challenges you meet, the more, the more you exercise your skills. It's a work in progress. So I feel the family is the place where resilience must be actually, demonstrated in thought, word, and deed. When challenges strike, how do you deal with it? And it doesn't have to be in a very preachy fashion, because kids just pick it up like that. So, and I think that's probably the best gift I had, where I had resilience bequeathed to me. And I think among the bequeaths, this is the most valuable I hold. So, but that said, coming to the pandemic, most people think resilience is just bouncing back. But I would like to sort of define it even more. It's just not bouncing back, because for me, some challenge strikes, or some challenge emerges. And when you bounce back, it's just going back to status quo, to where you were earlier. But when you're truly resilient, you not only bounce back, of course, that's important, and you bounce forward. You discover strengths, skills, which you know you never had. I'm talking all this not from a very cognitive space, but from a lived experience, very experiential space. In my life, I've been tested not once but multiple times, and every time, every challenge sort of helped me build my perspectives. And this is something I'd love to tell young people. We have no control over circumstances in our lives, especially the pandemic. I mean, that is beyond our control. But where we have control, where we have complete choice, and I think that's where free will lies, is in choosing our response to it. I'll give you another little story. This is one of my favorite stories. He's my icon of resilience, Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist and a neurologist. He lived in Vienna, and during World War II, he and his family, which included his parents, his sister, and his pregnant young wife, they were sent to the Auschwitz concentration camp. Frankl was there in the camp for 4 years, and his most beautiful book is Man's Search for Meaning. It's a slim book. If you haven't read it, if there's one book which I would say everyone has to read before they die, it's Man's Search for Meaning. In the first half of the book, he talks about the horrors he went through at the Nazi concentration camp. I read this book maybe 20 years back when I was going through a health crisis. After that, it made me realize, what am I grumbling about? You know, vis-a-vis those challenges. And, you know, he never let it embitter him. He never let it say, okay, and then, you know, detailing. And I wonder if I would have been able to go through 10 minutes of what he went through. And he went through this for 3 years. What Frankl says is, and at the end of the 4th year, the camp was liberated because the Germans, the Nazis lost the war, and Frankl's family died, including his wife. His sister and he survived, and they immigrate to the US. And what does he do with the trauma he underwent? He decides to start a very trauma-informed therapy called logotherapy, based on his own experiences in dealing with trauma. Frankl's essence is that between stimulus and response, there is a gap. And that's where he says our choice lies, our free will lies. These are coming back to the pandemic. I think young people, it's very natural to feel frustrated, absolutely. And for me, being resilient is not that you don't experience the frustrations, the disappointments, the angst, the pain, the anger. You experience all that. In fact, you need to own that, you know, because transformation after a challenge doesn't just happen like that. If it happens like that, trust me, it doesn't last. You have to face, own up everything. Yes, and you know, embrace all that. That is very, very important. Of course, I mean, I went to college in the 80s. I think I'm Gen Y. And I still can't imagine how young people, you know, deal day in and day out on a virtual environment. It's such a loss. And of course, that loss has to be validated. It has to be legitimized. We need to own it. Otherwise, we're just trivializing and minimizing, and anything which is trivialized, minimized is there on the back burner, simmering, waiting to erupt. So it's extremely natural to feel all these feelings. But the thing is, please don't allow that to embitter you, to, you know, make us feel like victims. Because I feel this victim mindset is something I just see everywhere across genders. You know, it's so easy. What do I mean by victim mindset? It's so easy to blame others. the pandemic. Oh, I would have done this, but for the pandemic. I would have gone to this Ivy League institution. The pandemic came in the way. I would have done this, but my mom didn't allow me. You know, we're just ready to find people to outsource the blame. That's a victim mindset. Think of Frankl. He could have easily slipped into a victim mindset, but he went into a survivor mindset and then thrived. Of course, in the beginning, he did wallow in all those difficult feelings. So point number one, I would say, avoid the victim trap. It's not only a very practical advice, I think it's also a spiritual truth. You know, why it's so natural to ask, why me? There are no answers to that. Why the pandemic? We don't know. So one is stop looking for excuses and stop looking for opportunities to outsource blame. And when you do that, you take responsibility for your lives. And I think this is the age when, you know, we really take responsibility for our lives. In fact, we're so used to outsourcing responsibility, whether it's in a parental-child relationship or in a spousal relationship. And with that also comes the thinking that outward circumstances, other people are responsible for my happiness. No, I am responsible for my happiness. And then, therefore, how do you stay motivated? Please don't look for external sources to always keep motivating you. Yes, of course, you might, it's wonderful if you find a mentor. It's wonderful you find someone to champion you. And trust me, when you're ready, the person shows up. You know, it's just nature's way of just aligning, you know, things just fall in place. And if you, I'm sure each of you would find a mentor, someone who would champion you. And when that happens, number one, and that will happen when you reclaim power, own your power. It's so easy to just give away power and then blame others. But I feel nobody can take away our power without our permission at some unconscious level. So that's one. And the second thing, I think this ties up with what Neerja was speaking about, you know, creating those communities. I'd also like to call it a tribe or a sangha, where you really feel you belong. And there is something which bonds us together. And I loved, Neerja, I loved the example of your daughter. You know, the way she was exploring various options. And I think resilience is not giving into those feelings. Those feelings are very, very normal. And I think we need to validate those feelings for ourselves. I think not only young people, even older adults, we feel guilty. We think, oh, resilience is, you know, very robotically, you don't feel any of those things and you are this super person. No, and I think it's also learning to co-hold vulnerability and strength. We think of vulnerability as weakness, as something very disempowering. But I think that's the essence of being human. And I think Neerja also, or was it someone else who mentioned that we need to be comfortable in co-holding polarities. There's joy and sadness but somehow we sort of tend to think in either or mindsets. Either I can be happy or I can be sad. So therefore, in the pandemic, one is create a sangha, look for a mentor or someone to champion you, someone who can sort of point a path. But even I think this relationship with a mentor should not be like, you tell me what to do. But, you know, help me, be a mirror. That person, the ideal mentor, will be a mirror to you, show you for who you are, warts and all, your strengths, as well as areas where you need to improve. I've had some wonderful mentors
Thank you so much, Dr. Nandini. We could, speak so much on this topic, but I also realize that we've gone a little above time. But there's a wealth of, experience that, I can really see that you would like to share with us. And hopefully, we will have another opportunity to kind of hear from you. But I think, all of this is also available through your website and through the books that you've kind of, written. And I definitely would recommend everyone to kind of, go through that. Given that we've crossed the time, I would like to, kind of ask Kupu the last question, of course, staying on with resilience and also the question on failure. I mean, it's a very harsh word, and I really don't believe, there's anything called failure. But how would you kind of like to tell the girls here in terms of how do they deal with if they feel that they have failed? So how do they kind of, deal with that and build resilience?
So like Dr. Nandini was saying so much about resilience, I would like to share in a very simple way, how when we go to watch movies, we pay a huge amount from pocket money and we wait for the story to get interesting, and the cinema gets interesting only when there is a twist in the story, and the twist is almost unexpected always, right? You cannot put your resilience to test if there are no challenges. But my heart goes out to the students and the women that are trying to come back to work at this time, because whatever I experienced in my life like a decade back on how I defined failure and lessons do not exactly apply. So I will come with a word of caution or care when I share that from my life. You all have to add your own style and your own ingredients to it to relate to it. So that I will leave it to you, because we are all different kinds of people with different depths of experience and maturity to learn from what failure is. So back in 1990s somewhere, I failed in my 12th grade. And then being the only failed student in the school with my mother being the teacher, to learn what resilience is, I think I learned it only when looking back. One thing I did was I showed up every day. People might have wondered, this girl has no shame. I went to school to collect award when I got English first rank in school, biology first rank in school, but I was the only candidate who failed in math. So sometimes when you look back, the dots start to connect, right? When you're standing at that time in your life, it makes no sense. Why am I the one who's always subjected to test? Why is the universe always sending me challenges? We tend to quickly go into self-pity mode than trying to understand, okay, these are the dots that will later make sense to me or make me unique, make my life unique, where I can go on to help people who are lost in the future. So, you know how whenever such things come into the fore, you always have two brains, right? One is your heart brain and one is your brain. I think all of us should take time to step a little out of our emotion and look at how our brain functions. Coursera has a lot of courses that they give to understand how to hack into your everyday brain, because it's not just about waking at the right side of the bed, right? You have your ow brain and you have your wow brain, they say. Most of us don't get to learn it in school because that's not taught. And most of us don't learn because we are not self-aware of why certain incidents are happening. So a few tips on how to do this resilience hack is, resilience comes to the fore only when your brain starts handling stress. So I think in your own handwriting, you can write those things, paste it in your mirror or where you often come in touch with your places in your home. In your own nice handwriting, write what brings you joy, what you're thankful about. Practicing gratitude is very, very important to hack this stress, right? And always, important to remember the balance between little bit of this and that. You have to know where to take things seriously and where to take things personally, where it's a balance where you're walking this tightrope. I want to find the purpose in life, but at the same time, I cannot walk with this burden on my shoulders saying I'm here to save the world. To take one day at a time is not an easy skill. But like I said, if you hack into your EQ, be a little more self-aware. What makes me angry? What makes me happy? What gives me joy? What gives me peace? So if it is about talking to your friend, For some people it's volunteering. When they give, they find this joy. All that anger goes away. All that, why am I so lost goes away with 1 hour of volunteering. So sign up to those hacks in life that works only for you. And sometimes people say you have to be always positive. It's okay not to be okay. And talk to people who are trustworthy to understand if you're feeling low, if it's going to stay for a while or it's just a phase that will pass by. Make connections and accept the change. Something that school or colleges don't teach is all that what makes life what it is, right? Self-love and being more self-aware. And life makes some sense only when you look back, and by then you don't want to be 40 like me. So just hang in there and use various social media or summits like these to network. Now don't let go of Neeraja, I would say. I know a bit of Nandini's work via Dr. Soundarya Rajesh. I now have seen Amar talking. Now I'm going to stalk her and wherever she has a profile and see what work she's done. The only thing that differentiates many of us and those that become successful is they always show up. However the day is, they just show up and put their attendance. Present ma'am, present sir, I'm here. Whatever, let it happen, let it happen. And when we talk about our tragedies, I think that's what makes us who we are eventually. Don't shy away from failures. Talk to us. I think we are all here in this summit. Vandana and Jinal are great people, great friends and mentors who you can trust. So if you're here today, first of all, well done. You've used your Sunday well. Don't let go of any of these people. Learn from their lives. I would say you all did well just by being here in this moment. So thank you, Neeraja. Thank you, Vandana and Jinal. That's all from me for now. Yeah.
Thank you, Kupu. Thank you, Amar. Thank you, Dr. Nandini. And I will hand over it back to Jinal and Vandana. As I said, it was such an interesting topic, and it's not only relevant for young girls, it's relevant for everyone, given the situation that we are all in. And hence, we have gone overboard on time, but I think it was definitely something which was very meaningful and a lot of takeaways. So I give it back to the W Square team.
Thank you so much, Neeraja, and it was beautiful and amazing to listen to all you four wonderful ladies. Definitely inspiring and motivating, and a big thank you for responding back to the questions on the chat. I think that was something that helped a lot of us kind of answer queries because we were running short of time. But thank you so much once again to the four of you here. And in fact, this kind of sums up our Day 3 for the Herb Mind Matters. And it gives me great pleasure to thank each and every one of you participating here and the panelists who've been with us through the past 3 days.